So far on Ventures in Wine Country, the Terabella team has endured almost a year and a half of delays, but their new wine shop in West Kelowna is finally beginning to take shape, and the cautious optimism is slowly turning into excitement. An epic growing season and a summer of fun events at Covert Farms have culminated in a cellar full of fun and unique possibilities for the 2014 vintage. And an equally phenomenal vintage at Painted Rock has paired nicely with some behind-the-scenes developments for the Canadian brand that are gaining traction throughout the valley. Winter in Canada's Okanagan Valley. Relatively speaking, temperatures are mild here through the cooler months compared to many parts of the country. But it wouldn't be winter in Canada without at least a little snow. Or a lot.
Heading out to plow some of the roads on the farm. Not really sure how bad it is. Oh, man. This is just a ton of snow.
At Covert Farms, Gene and his family have a day or two of work ahead of them before they can get power back online, or even leave the farm.
Sounds like the most of the South Okanagan Similkameen is out of power with trees down everywhere from the heavy snow. Very rare for the Okanagan. Well, we got the plow on the tractor there. Got a broken power line here with anchor wire broken and just about touching the vineyard. Got a pretty dangerous situation over there, so got to get a hold of the power company and get this sorted out.
But winter in wine country isn't all work and no play, and British Columbia has some unique twists on old traditions.
Sun Peaks and the Okanagan Wine Festivals Society saw fit 18 years ago to say, we are going to make this a hallmark of our winter. 10 days of superb skiing, riding, winter activities paired with British Columbia wines and the culinary arts. All of our events generally take place after the lifts close. So it's truly an amazing après festival. Every day was something new, whether it be mulled wine and snowshoeing in the evening to a culinary arts and wine evening called Taste of Sun Peaks.
Although the wine industry usually offers a little downtime for a few weeks early in the new year, even the relatively slower winter months often aren't quite the break one might expect.
I don't know, it just never stopped this winter. It was pretty busy. We had numerous events at various ski hills throughout the season with wine tastings. The winter wine sales are, strong. There's definitely with BC, there's a big ski tourism component to it. Even like the hell skiing, cat skiing kind of operations.
At Black Swift, the temperatures have finally dipped low enough for the vines to enter dormancy, meaning they can now be safely pruned without leaving them susceptible to damage during a deeper freeze.
We normally start pruning once the temperature is low enough, so that could range from October, November, sometimes January. It just all depends on how the season goes. We're trying to prune knee-deep snow, so that proves a little difficult. So sometimes you have to work around your environment. Normally we try and get it done before bud breaks so that it just makes it easier for us.
And in the cellar, the 2014 vintages are aging well. It will be anywhere from several months to a couple of years before last year's reds are ready for bottling. But for the whites in this grape-to-glass story, the first tastes are almost here. Blending is just about to begin. Spring has come early in 2015 and has been unseasonably warm so far, even for an area where unusually warm is becoming the usual.
Right now, this looks like the earliest spring that I can remember for my, whatever it's been, 8 years in the BC wine industry.
Bud development, or like bud health through the winter was very good. And we're seeing lots of, everything's pushing really well right now. So at this stage of the game, it's all healthy. We're about 3 weeks early on apricot blossom and subsequently everything else. So it's new uncharted territory.
But an early spring doesn't necessarily mean a great season. And at these latitudes, the potential for a devastating shift in the weather at this time of year is still a very real threat.
You know, buds are swelling, everything's exciting, the weather's great, but I have to admit I live in paranoia of some frost coming in and just decimating the progress that's been made so far. I mean, it was 2005, we got a big frost, crops were maybe bad fruit set or whatever, and the crops were decimated and everything was kind of doom and gloom. But those wines actually turned out really well because yields were controlled naturally. So I'm sure Rob doesn't want the yields to be controlled naturally, or any accountant in the industry, but if it happens, so be it. That's the wine business.
Yeah, tonight's not shaping up to be great. We got a north wind, a cold front blowing through, and it's scattered showers and snow on the mountaintops right now, with a forecast for it to clear off tonight. So it's kind of that whole combination of a morning rain and then clearing off late in the day, and you don't have any heating going on. So yeah, it could be a long night.
Despite a couple of uneasy nights, the vines have come through the week unscathed, and the weather forecast is calling for warmer weather again. It's now almost a year since the first buds of the 2014 vintages began to emerge. These buds are blooming a full 3 weeks earlier than in 2014, even before signs of winter have fully faded from the surrounding hills.
Oh, I don't want to jinx it. It's really good. I hate to say it, but if anybody's benefiting from global warming, you're looking at it. It's been a rather inert early season. No real extremes in temperatures.
While Mother Nature seems to be guiding the vineyard beautifully through the spring, Gabe's capable hands are ensuring last year's wines are progressing nicely in the cellar, too.
Now in the cellar, not really much going on, but just checking sulfurs and barrels. I gave the 2014s their first racking, got those sulfur topped up, and now our Chardonnay actually will be coming out of barrel, and so getting that cold settled and protein stable and getting ready for bottling in the next month or so, yeah.
For the first time since 2013, progress on the new development at Black Swift seems to be mirroring the rapid pace in the vineyard. This week, a symbolic indication that the hatch will soon be ready.
Have this egg suspended above El Blanco. A blacksmith, Ted Howell, is going to create this egg out of steel, and we're going to cut an oval hole out above the head. It's actually going to suspend right there in the sign.
Part of the logo for the winery is egg. This is a prototype I've done out of 2 sheets of metal. A few hours of hammering, and this is how it ends up. These are all tools that I build and design for each job.
This is the baby. We put a lot of our blood, sweat, and tears into this so far. It's taken a lot of figuring out to get the CNC program, how we can apply it to this. We're going to keep the natural ends of the wood from its previous purpose.
I think this really speaks a lot to what we're all about, which is to say just we really want to have a real connection of our customers to our products, but also the people we work with. This is something Darren worked on for hours and hours and hours, and not something you just bang off in a factory. This is a one of a kind that will never be duplicated, and that's how we're looking at our wine program. There's certain wines that we'll make that we'll never make again, and that's kind of the exciting part of it for Jason and I particularly. We can make a crazy experiment at the hatch, and if it goes really well, that's great, and if it goes horribly, we'll drink it all and move on next year.
By April, it's not just the vines that are waking up to warmer weather. Various activities around the wine shop are starting to fill the calendars as summer approaches once again.
We are in the middle of April, and I try to be ready to open the wine shop this Saturday. It's always the same thing every year. You get stressed the month or the week before. The stress to not be enough ready, to not be enough organized. But I mean, no, I have everything under control.
You know, there's actually a few different things we're working on this summer for some major stuff coming. There's Go Media, the entire Canadian travel world will come to Penticton this year. I've got my 2 weddings coming up this summer in August, a list of around 6 different dinners. Area 27, the supercar racetrack just south of us, is going to start, doing some events. So we're going to be hosting some supercars out here, as well as installing our electrical charging stations for Teslas and Chevy Volts and all those kind of vehicles. So I'm basically pushing for staffing right now and trying to get everyone locked into place. So I've got people coming in from as far as France, Quebec, and Edmonton to come work here this summer, and I need to convince them that dilapidated picker cabins are luxurious and they'll enjoy living there. It's always hard in the grayer months of the winter to show people what it's really going to be like.
A new season often means new faces. But after a successful fall in the winery with Gabe, one familiar face is taking charge in the wine shop this spring.
So I actually moved here from Toronto last fall to work as a cellar hand in the winery. Loved it, and I got a really strong relationship with John and everyone else that works here. And so when they had an opening in the wine shop, it kind of made sense for me to move into there. So our first day open is Friday, May 1st, and that's also the first day of Wine Fest.
Painted Rock does have one new face this spring, though familiar enough to John. Today is Lauren Skinner's first day stepping into her new role with the family business.
There's obviously a little bit of pressure coming into a family business, but this is something I always knew I wanted to be a part of, and I've worked to educate myself. I went and did my MBA over in Bordeaux, and I came back and got some really great work experience. So I think I'm ready to kind of conquer whatever pressure is there and be a part of the family business in any way I can. I'm really excited.
Lauren has just come into the business. She honed her skills and has come back to work as business development manager beside me.
Family business, there's a little bit of everything, so I'm gonna have a little bit of that jack of all trades style, but I'm also gonna be doing a lot more of the marketing and some of the sales to restaurants in Vancouver and helping my mom out. She's been behind the scenes being a complete workhorse, so I'm gonna take over some of the stuff that she's been handling, a little bit of payroll and some inventory. So I think it's really gonna be a bit of a mashup, but I think the business development manager title kind of circumferences everything.
I remember it was me responsible for the signs the first time around. I had them all made too small, and everybody had to have binoculars or something to read where Painted Rock was. She said, "Dad, people have to know where you are." And so it'll be far easier to find Painted Rock from now on. Now we have nice lettering and beautiful. That's exquisite signage that they've just put up.
I mean, I just met Jasmine moments ago, and she seems great. And Kirsten, I met last summer, and she's been phenomenal. Jill in Vancouver is dynamite. Just absolutely love her, and she's keeps us all on track and working towards the right goals. And I mean, obviously, getting to work with my mom and dad is ideal. That's nothing better than a family business.
So we got a really good team here now. How many men were in that equation? Got Gabe down in the winery and Barry in the vineyard and Ravinder and his family, but really, I've got some very talented women in the organization, and they're good. They're good. They're to a large degree why we're good. I mean, sorry, Gabe. Gabe's doing a wonderful job for us, and Barry's knocking himself dead in the vineyard. So we got a really good Painted Rock team.
At the Hatch in West Kelowna, this spring isn't about new faces. Rob's team has been patiently waiting for a chance to settle into the roles they were hired for almost 2 years ago. Still a few weeks left to go, but the pace of work seems to be increasing day by day, and their unique vision is finally beginning to look like a reality.
The original idea that I was given from Jason was they would like it if they looked like they were falling over. They're like rickety old barns, and if we could have moss on the roof and whatnot, but with a building code and having to repurpose the buildings, we can't do that, but structurally make them sound, but then make them aesthetically look like they've been here for a really long time. Once we're actually doing a cleanup right now inside, because there's a bunch of the actual pieces, tasting bar, harvest table, that stuff's coming this evening. So now we can start trenching, do it properly, and then the dirt work outside for steps and landscaping and whatnot. So that's probably going to be the next couple of weeks of Dusty Bowl City.
I was originally hired on to kind of run this place once it existed, and of course it didn't exist. So I spent most of my time at Perseus last year and in the office doing more of like an operations logistics kind of thing. Well, we should be about a month away from opening, give or take a couple of days. For the winery as a whole, it's mostly the landscaping and the parking lot and just sort of the last little bits and bobs going in here.
The hatch buildings are about a week away from being complete. Doesn't quite look like that now because we've got nests and sickles and old brooms everywhere, but it is happening and it's coming together, and we're really, really, really excited that this is finally going to launch.
I'm excited because, again, it's something different. I'm more about winning an award and all those great things that are great accomplishments. I want to see a winery where people can show up and put a bib on and have barbecue and drink really great wine out of a mason jar. Is that good? Is that bad? I don't know, but I think it's interesting. So the hatch, if any place that can happen, it's there. So yeah, we're about a month away realistically, which means I owe Rob that case of wine because I failed on my deadline.
Back in the cellars, blending is now underway, when the winter ferments are mixed and fine-tuned to dial in the flavors before the wine is put into bottles.
Just starting to go into our blending right now. I've done a little bit more lees aging on a couple of the wines, so they're developing really nicely.
I mean, right now we're looking at 14 whites in tank. They're always challenging to see what they're going to be like until we actually get them in bottle. And that's sort of always the case from large format to small format.
Blending can mean combining varietals to create a blended wine, but it can also be the process of blending different lots of the same varietal to create a unique flavor profile.
So when we pick the Chardonnay, we do some micro harvest where we pick certain parts of the Chardonnay just because the flavor profiles are a bit different. And then when we sit down with the land, we choose the type of oak, new or 50% new, 50% first fill.
Gabe actually let me inoculate a couple of the tanks myself, so I would make up the yeast mixture, and so I named those. So one of them's named Rufus, actually, so I feel very fond about some of the barrels.
We've learned with the creation of our Chardonnay that we actually create a number of different wines and then blend to a specific style. We have the cast of characters, the pieces of the puzzle, and then we put it together, and it's a really rewarding experience.
White wines generally don't require the same time or attention as reds, but like with most things, patience and attention to detail are what separate the good from the great.
The difference between a good Chardonnay and an outstanding Chardonnay is a lot of work, and that's why we try to improve all the time the selection of the oak. We have new cooperages now in the blend. We tried it in 14, we've seen a huge improvement. The other part is, of course, the training of the vines in the vineyard, but also it's the vinification processes. All the processes that we use for the Chardonnay are very important. On the day you decide to pick, up to the techniques and all the processes that you use in the crush on the crush pad, and then in the fermentation process, the yeast and everything. We're something between the, I wouldn't say good, but very good and outstanding. So that's where we are at the moment, I think.
Alain is here for his final visit before the Chardonnay is bottled. The finishing touches to the blend were made during his last visit in February, and today's focus is mainly on the reds. But one last taste and a final tweak never hurts.
We just added a bit of citric acid to it, just to help with, I think his concern was the finish. It was a bit short, so we added some citric acid to help with that. Alain gave his approval, so it's ready to go, and I think it's going to be, it's pretty, really nice wine this year, probably I think one of our best, so it's going to be really nice. He really enjoyed everything, enjoyed the wines. He was very pleased how the vineyard's coming along, and yeah, it was a really good visit. He told us all we were doing a great job, and that means a lot coming from him. So when he comes, when he came in December, he's like, okay, let's start the lees a bit more. In February when he came, he's like, okay, this lot you can take off lees, put it in stainless steel, or stop stirring, because it's where it's got a nice mouthfeel that we like. So what is lees? What you do is you just take a wand and you mix it in barrels, and that brings up those like that sediment or those dead yeast cells, and what it does, it gives the wine more of a texture, more of a mouthfeel. So that's what we do when we leave it on lees or sur lie.
As the wines begin to reach their maturity, their story becomes more clear, and it's time for the first bit of marketing, which for the average consumer looking at a store shelf begins with the label.
I think there's too many wineries all doing the same thing with the same serious labels. You know, Blasted Church actually deserves some recognition because they stuck their neck out, and a lot of the experts at the time told us that that's a label that would last 5 years. The public doesn't like it, or won't like it for long. But 2 years ago, they were the fastest growing wine in BC, and they're probably 7 or 8 years into their label now. We didn't emulate them, but we certainly got some courage from what they've done. The theory is that in a retail store, if someone picks your wine up, you got about a 20 to 30% chance that they'll buy it just because they touch it and read it. But if they hold it for 5 to 10 seconds, then they'll actually, then there's a 50% chance they'll buy it. And these labels, I just get a kick out of watching people pick them up because they just look at them. And they look at them and then turn them sideways and they're trying to figure out what they are. But I love them. They're phenomenal.
Design changes year over year are actually very, very subtle. I mean, essentially, it's the vintage date, the UPC code on the back, maybe an update to some of the data on the back of the label, if it is pertinent to that harvest year. Labels are a lot of work. I mean, you have to go over proofs again and again and again because if you screw up, it's really expensive, and and both in time and money. So, yeah, if you got something you're happy with, stick with it. You know, we set up a perfect setting. It was sort of a food and placement setting, and just have some fun with it, and make people think about the wine and more than just a bottle of wine, and how it can be part of food and relationships.
I think Gene Colbert and myself have started to try and push the winery in a direction where we're just going to make things as honestly and as passionately as we can and follow our course. Certified organic, biodynamic management wines that are, have the certifications from third parties that show that we're doing those things, and stop trying to be what everyone else is doing and just, stay the course. And it feels that the more authenticity and honesty we have in this story, the more we're connecting with our clients, and we're looking for the same clients that believe in the ideas that we believe.
In our first vintage, I brought on a branding company, CF Napa, and they did a magnificent job with our labels and everything. They really have honed in all the brand colors and everything with Painted Rock. Very happy with CF Napa. My first and foremost request of Dave was I wanted timelessness. It had to be timeless. I wanted to create a logo that would always stand the test of time and be ours in the family forever. Cute was big in the industry at the time, and we were anti-cute. I said, no. No critters, no cute. So Painted Rock is neither of those things. It's just sticking around for a long time.
For many connoisseurs, the label isn't the only thing that matters. The bottle itself can say a lot about the wine it contains, or sometimes even about the people who've crafted it. From tradition to cost to environmental concerns, there are many considerations here too.
We've changed bottles over the years. We used to have an individual bottle per SKU and style, and at the end of the day, I don't think it really, it doesn't make the wine taste any different.
Gene made a really interesting choice to do Burgundian bottles. Initially all with screw caps, and when I came on board, I was really impressed with that. And more in a sense because I think that so much of BC compares himself to the rest of the world. And I've had other wineries go, well, you can't put a Bordeaux blend in that glass. And I look at it and think, does it really make the wine taste different?
Pragmatically and logistically, setting up bottling lines and ordering glass, having all these different molds, you always got little bits left over at the end. It really made a lot more sense for us to just choose a bottle style that worked for most of our wines. And the Burgundy bottle works really well for that, reds or whites. And we're a new wine region, we can make up what we want to do and such. So that's really, we can bottle more, there's no changeovers on the bottling line other than labels, it's all going into capsules. So
for us to choose sustainable glass that's comes out of Washington State, it's all recyclable, and we have a low carbon footprint, to me is going to be a lot more important than if it's the right shape of bottle.
I bought this bottle called Ancien, and it was this Bordeaux-style bottle that weighed a ton. And that was vintage 1 and vintage 2. I went back to Savor Glass, who supply my glass, and I said, have you got a similar, I love the architecture of this glass, but have you got one that's lighter? Or our filled cases were 44 pounds a case. Holy mackerel. I'm getting old. They were really heavy to lug around. They came back to me and they had an eco version of that bottle. And I said, bingo. And it weighed about 65% of what the early bottle did, but it had the same architecture. And that's the bottle we use now. It was all about doing the right thing for the environment. And within 2 years, Ontario does not allow those bottles anymore.
And going back numerous years, one of my favorite wineries in the entire world is called Antica Terra. And they're mostly a Pinot producer out of Oregon. Probably one of the most spectacular people I've ever met, you know, inside, outside the wine industry. She's just a huge asset to me. Her bottle, her old bottle of Pinot kind of pops into mind. I was like, I really want this bottle. Like, it's weird, it's cool, it's different. Like, no one else uses it up here. For these grapes, you're never gonna see these kinds of wines in this bottle. So I contacted her and asked like which bottle she used to use. So she gave me her old supplier, the exact bottle name, got a hold of them, got the wine ordered. And then at one of the meetings for, just talking about, okay, if we got bottles covered, we got screw caps, we got this, we got labels, who's doing this, who's doing that. And they were mentioning hatch screw caps. So I was like, oh, the bottle I ordered is cork. And like, can we get a screw cap one? I'm like, no, that doesn't exist. So okay, I guess we're gonna go cork on these ones. So there's a few minutes of like debate on it, because New World wines don't put a cork in a $25 bottle of white wine, but we're like, that kind of really goes to how contrarian we are, that we're putting wines in strange bottles, we're putting cork in them. And the first one that came off, we're like, that's perfect. Like, there's sort of this sense of amazement of pulling this off and looking at it, be like, we did it, like, this is perfect.
For white wines particularly, the final step before bottling is filtration, and there are a handful of options in the Okanagan. Some larger wineries have their own dedicated systems, but Painted Rock, Covert Farms, and the Terabella team all use a mobile filtration system from Naramata-based Cellar Dweller.
At Painted Rock, we predominantly do their white wines. We've obviously been doing at Covert Farms, where we actually store our equipment.
Filtering is, to some degree, a cosmetic process. It doesn't have to be done. It's a very clean process. Depending on the scale of it, it can be a very fast process as well.
With wines, especially white wines, most consumers want a wine that's very clean, bright, and crisp. So this is a cross-flow filter system. Turbid wine will go in a circle, and filtered wine will come through the membranes.
You basically end up with one pass, you get a sterile wine. So it fits in well with the process of preparing the wines for bottling, because the filtration can happen just a day or two prior to.
For the winemakers and vineyard crews, this is a big week. The 2014 whites and a year and a half of hard work are finally being put into bottle.
Bottling is one of those things where there's so many moving parts where, from getting the wine ready, making sure all the bottles and, people are here on time, and make sure everything goes smoothly. So it's always stressful when you first start, but once everything's in bottle, that last bottle's off, it's like, okay, now I can relax and it's one less thing to worry about.
We've got a Muscat coming off, very small release for the hatch. There's probably 90 cases. We've got a Sem coming off, I think it's about 300 cases. We've got some Gamay coming off, and we've got some Riesling from East Kelowna that's going to be going into the blacksmith. So,
technology has made the bottling process a much faster experience than it once was, though it's still not everyone's cup of tea. For some, bottling is a stressful time. For others, a sense of relief.
People say, bottling is hard, and say it's the worst thing you can possibly do, but I wouldn't want to miss out on a bottling run, because it's a hellish experience, but it still connects you that much closer to these wines.
Actually, bottling went really well. Everything that we had scheduled for bottling got bottled with the labels showing up on time, and the package looks amazing. We're really happy with our new double barrel program, limited release, 2 reds, Cabernet and a Zinfandel.
With the 2014 whites finally in bottle, marketing and sales will soon become the focus up and down the valley. As opening day steadily approaches at the Hatch, the launch of several brands is keeping the marketing team even busier than usual.
The Hatch is sort of the main brand. Black Swift is sort of the premium level of what's coming out of this location, at least to start. Each brand has a unique voice, and so you have to be very conscious of what voice you're using what brand you're promoting. So the Perseus brand has its own specific target demographic, its own market, its own audience, and so the voice that we use for that social media is unique compared to the Hatch, which is much more eclectic and irreverent and interesting, and it's a totally different thing. So different challenges for everyone. The designs and the styles and all of that. It's got to be totally different.
The sales game can also be a delicate balancing act in an industry where your products can change quite a bit from year to year, and your supply can change even more.
From my job title and what I do here, it requires me to really manage the product so that we don't have stockouts. The biggest thing I can fail at right now is running out of the product once it's had a great listing and thus lose that listing.
We've been sold out of Chardonnay for a long time, and we just bottled 610 cases of it, and the market needs it. We are trying to get better at our game. There are certain licensees that we just have to maintain an allocation for regardless, and they've been incredibly loyal to us. We are very loyal to them, and we cannot run out again.
I need to make sure that I don't flood the market and then disappear for 14 and lose market share, which, like everybody in retail knows, or any sort of business, it's much easier to keep clients than win them back after you burn them.
In Naramata, on the southeastern shore of Lake Okanagan, the University of British Columbia School of Business is hosting a Wine Leaders Forum in association with the Kedge Business School in Bordeaux. And for John Skinner and his Terroir BC colleagues, the discussion has been energizing.
I'm working as an academic in and for the wine industry. Not the wine as a product, but the wine as a business and all what is related to the management of wine operation from an organization and business perspective.
It's been a wonderfully productive forum for learning to work together, learning to try to solve issues within our community and within our industry.
In this kind of forum, which are about a strategic issue, fundamental strategic issue. You never know, it can go in different directions, sometimes hard to have people, looking and agreeing on things, because of course they are all of them related to what they're doing, it's their own business, but plus additionally it is wine, and wine is a living product. So the relation between usually wine owners and their product is quite different than the one that those you can see in other type of industries.
There's somebody without an agenda, and we needed to find common ground and ways to solve issues that were outstanding in the industry. And I think we made a really, really good first start.
No, it was I think, a truly very interesting experience, but more than interesting, very positive experience for the future of the valley.
After 18 long months and countless delays, the tasting room at Black Swift is finally complete, and opening is only a couple of weeks away. Whether the stress of the last year has taken its toll, or the team is finally relaxing and having a little fun, they'll likely be happy wearing fewer hats in the months to come.
Jason sometimes walks around with funny helmets on, and I tend to worry about him. Rob just kind of has this evil grin on his face all the time, and I've been drinking too much. So there's no doubt that stress has played a little bit of a role, but I don't think launching a project such as this and trying to come up with a vision as wide as this has been and trying to pull it off in a year and a half is something that normal people do. So
I wouldn't say Jason was going batty, I'd say Jason was being normal. We're going to try to keep that one big helmet that Jason was wearing as the official winemaker's helmet. So I think Jason's probably earned the right that that's his and only his hat. So fortunately, the people who had the decisions, mostly being Jason and Renee, there's not much that I could ever add to their vision. That Jason started with a vision and I saw it first and was like, yeah, there's not much more I can add to that, because if I could do it myself, that's it right there. Then of course our nice collection of antiques supplied by a good neighbor across the street from us who has basically a museum in his backyard and is really excited to lend us some stuff and showcase.
What Renee and Jeremy have done with that project is, the only guidance that I gave them, and Jason I think too, is that we envision wood and rust. And they took that, looked at a couple of our labels, and came up with this building or two buildings that are just, it's an absolute dream. And in all honesty, it's surpassed my expectation. I'm just so excited to get behind the bar and tell our story and just go for the next couple of years and really have a home base to discuss what we're all about.
London, England, the center of the wine world. While very little wine is produced in England compared to many nearby countries, London is arguably the world's largest market for wine, and without a doubt, the place to be noticed by reviewers and writers.
So today, it's a tasting of Canadian wines for trade and media. It's the largest pan-Canadian delegation that has been at an international event that's been organised by the Government of Canada in collaboration with the industry associations.
There is still a somewhat low level of knowledge of Canadian wine. I know we're very well known for ice wine, which is, one of our flagship wines, but table wines, sparkling wines, internationally, we're not that well known yet.
To garner international renown and elevate the brand's profile, this is where Canadian wine needs to be.
Well, I contacted Janet in May of last year and asked her if we could do something at Canada House, and all of a sudden she was in touch with Emma in Canada House, and Emma got in touch with Ontario Wine Council, who got in touch with BC Wine Institute, and between all of us, we got our organizations together, our associations together, and the turnout has been very balanced and very enthusiastic, and the reception has been remarkable.
There's a place for Canadian wine here in the UK, definitely. However, it's still relatively unknown, and that's one of the aims of the tasting today, is to really get the message out there that Canada has some good, high-quality wines, and that we are able to supply the market, particularly the London market, where there's good opportunities.
Just the level of education and just class about wine in general here has just been mind-blowing. It's really, really special to be participating here. It's been really inspiring and really have had great enthusiastic responses, but it's also very intimidating because, you're in this center of this, one of the hubs of the world of wine. So,
there are certain styles and grape varieties that are starting to really make a name for themselves. This morning in our red wine masterclass, we had a flight of Syrah from BC, and I could hear the buzz in the room. A lot of people were really impressed with the Syrah that was coming out of BC.
With more than 30 Canadian wineries electing to make the journey to Trafalgar Square, this is the largest ever international Canadian wine event. The opportunity to be in the same room with some of the top wine writers and reviewers in the world is invaluable.
London is home to probably the highest percentage of serious opinion makers in the wine industry in the world. So if you want to win brand, you have to win them over.
Jancis Robinson, who is at our tasting today, has a regular column in the Financial Times, and that's just not Europe, that's the world.
We've had, Stephen Spurrier here, Jancis Robinson here, Hugh Johnson here, Jamie Goods here. I don't really care about athletes and meeting those kind of celebrities, but I've had goosebumps all day because these are really some of the best voices in the world of wines. I think the future of Canadian wine really has to be, different provinces, different regions all working together and starting to promote Canada as a whole, as opposed to Naramata or the Similkameen or Niagara on the Lake. It's all about really banding together and promoting Canadian wine, and doing that at the Canada House in the middle of Trafalgar Square has been an extremely special experience.
Next time on Ventures in Wine Country. Painted Rock's 2014 Chardonnay makes its way to Vancouver as Lauren hits the streets for her first round of solo sales calls, and two of Canada's top wine reviewers offer their first impressions. After almost 2 years of hard work, dedication, and an incredible amount of patience, the hatch at Black Swift finally opens its doors, and the team crosses its fingers that their gamble will pay off. And Covert Farms celebrates a decade of winemaking with a throwback party celebrating their roots, officially releasing their 2014 whites as our grape-to-glass story comes to an end.
We had 6 barrels of wine from 2010 that when we were bottling them in the spring of, I guess that would have been 2011, they were off. And so we put them to the side and bottled the rest of the wines. And the 6 barrels got left on the southwest side of the packing house, or the winery, and baked in the sun for a summer and sat out there for another winter. And then the following year, Derek, who had just started with us, suggested that we need some more wine-themed decorations down at the tasting room. So I said, well, go ahead and take those barrels. So he took the barrels and we set them out in front there in this decoration, and they sat there for another couple of years through summer's heat and rain and snow and freezing. And over the years, I'd wander by and we'd pull the bung out. And there would be some white film on them, and it's like, oh, that's kind of disgusting. And then we noticed last year that the white film had disappeared. So we worked up our nerve and tried it, and it appears that we've sort of somehow mistakenly made sherry. Having realized that we're at sherry, we had to try and figure out how we got here. The white film we saw is a floor yeast that will grow on top of the wine and actually covers it and seals it and protects it from oxygenation. And that floor yeast will grow and live on top of the wine until such time that the wine goes over about 19% alcohol, at which point it will die off and sink to the bottom. We keep telling we tell people about it, and sommeliers are like, really? Like, how all those steps along the way to have it all sort of come together one after the other.